Hey guys, what's up? So the big official server update is finally here, and let's do a quick recap. First is Moskov's revamp. They optimized his ultimate to give him new possibilities, but they had to nerf his other skills to balance his power. His ultimate will now create a shadow if it hits an enemy hero. You can use this skill again to teleport to the shadow and dash to a target direction. The dash will share the cooldown of his first skill. To balance, they had to lower his attack speed and HP attributes. And they also adjusted the cooldown reduction for every basic attack from 0.8 to 0.5 seconds. And skill 1 will have a slower attack speed at the late game. So how was your Moskov experience today? Do you like it? Next are the adjustments on Masha. You'll now need to build attack speed instead of defense because of the following changes. They removed the effect where she gains attack speed as she loses HP, and they replaced it with a new feature where she can gain defense stats. For every 1 defense from items or emblems will be converted into 0.25 physical attack. So if she gains 100 physical defense, it will turn into 25 physical attack. Another new mechanic is the HP bar. Losing her first HP bar will give her 25% healing received and 50% resilience. Losing her second HP bar will give her HP regen and 50% healing received. And it also grants her permanent crowd control immunity as long as she is on her last HP bar. They also changed her first skill by making it a one-time cast. What it does is give movement and attack speed for 4 seconds. During this state, each basic attack deals damage that's based on the target's maximum HP. And each basic attack on a hero or jungle creep will reduce the skill's cooldown by 1 second. Skill 2 will no longer disarm the enemy, but it can now pass through multiple targets. Her new ultimate will now deal damage based on the target's current HP. The target will be knocked back and they will also receive the disarm effect. This looks more fun on Masha because you're forced to use damage build. I recommend that you try her now before more people recognize her potential. Next is the adjustment on Argus. The heal and damage from his passive skill are increased. The extra attack from his passive will ignore 40% of the target's defense. His second skill has 3 new effects. Number 1. The skill will now count as basic attack damage, which means it can trigger attack effects. Number 2. You get faster charging speed when attacking a cursed target. Number 3. The animation becomes faster as you add more attack speed stats. To balance those new effects, they had to remove the cursed damage. As you can see, Layla's no longer receiving damage when moving. His ultimate has a new effect which grants increased charging speed when you level up the skill. I'm not sure with these adjustments though. We'll have to do more tests to see if he's better now. Next is the adjustment on Joy. The developers wanted to make it easier for opponents to deal with Joy and at the same time making it less difficult to play her. They removed the CC immunity to her second skill, but they've reduced its cooldown to 8 seconds on all levels. And to make her easier to play, you can now unlock the ultimate by casting her second skill twice. As you can see, I can use the ultimate with just 2 skills. To make it fair, the ultimate will have higher damage with more on-beat skills. If all her second skill are on-beat, she gets CC immunity for the entire duration of her ultimate. The cooldown is shortened to 24 seconds on all levels. So it's easier to activate the ultimate, but the CC immunity will be harder to achieve. What can our Joy players say about this? Next is the buff on Roger. His basic attack and skills on human form will now deal damage based on the enemy's current HP. Same for his wolf form where both skills and basic attack will deal damage based on the enemy's missing HP. Skill 2 in human form will now give attack speed and movement speed. To balance the new effect, they had to lower the damage of his skill 1 on both forms. They also removed the delay when Roger is switching from human to wolf. It's a good buff, right? Human form is more usable in this new version. Next is the buff on Khaleed. His first skill will now continue even without hitting a target, and they also increase the ultimate's channeling speed. To balance, they lower the damage reduction on his second skill. Next are the adjustments on Alucard. The developers wanted to give him more sustained damage without his ultimate, so they will make the following changes. His ultimate will now give more hybrid lifesteal when upgrading the skill, and it has a new effect where he gets hybrid defense from enemy heroes when using the skill. Skill 2 gets higher base damage and shorter cooldown. To balance, they had to remove the hybrid lifesteal bonus when using his ultimate, and he no longer deals extra damage when hitting a single hero. Next is Chang'e. They removed the damage increase effect on her ultimate and replaced it with slow effect. That means each stack will slow the enemy by 1% and it can reach 20%. To maintain her damage, they had to increase her first, second, and ultimate skill damage. So that means each hit from Chang'e can slow the enemy. It's like having a built-in Ice Queen wand. Can we remove it on her build to make use of the slot? Next is the buff on Tigreal. His ultimate can now stun enemies on its initial pull. They said it's a way to prevent his ultimate from being interrupted by those within the range. To balance, they will increase the cooldown of his ultimate and second skill. Is Tigreal usable again after this update? Next is the adjustment on Harith. His passive doesn't work well against high-level CCs, so they're changing it. Instead of gaining resilience, he will now get hybrid lifesteal from his passive skill. And he can only get resilience when using his ultimate. Next is the buff on Minsitthar. He can now cast other skills when his spear is returning. This makes it easier to perform combos like S1 plus S2 or S1 plus ultimate. Next is the buff on Guinevere. They've added a brief stun to her second skill so that the enemy can't easily escape from the airborne effect. They also increased the airborne chance to her ultimate from 6 to 8. Based on my previous tests, the ultimate will have a slightly longer CC duration compared before. And they've also added 75 seconds of cooldown to her ultimate. Next is the buff on Eve. They are increasing the slow effect on her second and ultimate skill. They had to do this because the previous nerfs on her skill and the item Ice Queen Wand were too much. Next is the buff on Gusion. Yes, it's finally here, guys. His first skill will have CC immunity when moving to a target. Time to dust off those daggers, Gusion means. Next is the buff on Julian. They've increased the range of his third skill so that it's easier to do a 2-3-1 combo. Next is the buff on Cecilion. Higher mana scaling on his first skill. They made this because of the adjustments on Lightning Truncheon, which I'll show you later. Next is the buff on Arlott. Higher base damage on his second skill. The developer said he didn't meet the expectations last update, so they had to increase his damage. Next is Valentina. She's still an irreplaceable pick on high rank and tournaments. To give other mages a chance, they will increase her ultimate cooldown to 120% on all levels. You've seen it on the last MPL, right? If there's a Faramis, there has to be Valentina on the other side. Next is the expected nerf on Nolan. His ultimate will have lower base damage and longer cooldown. That's an additional 15 to 9 seconds of cooldown. I think he's still good though. Next is the buff on Thamuz. His second skill will have a shorter cooldown, giving him more mobility. His ultimate also received a -5 second cooldown at late game. Next is the buff on Natan. He relies too much on his ultimate to deal damage, so they had to lower its cooldown. That's -4 seconds in the early game and -2 in the late game. Wait, that's it? Next is the buff on Lesley. Her passive gets a +25 base damage, and her first skill will have a shorter cooldown in the early levels. Next is the nerf on Terizla. Movement speed on his first skill will be slower in the early game. No change on the late game though. Next is the nerf on Fanny. She will recover less energy when hitting a marked target. They said the recent changes on jungling made her too strong, that's why they had to nerf her. Next is the nerf on Mathilda. Second skill will have a slightly longer cooldown in the early game, and the ultimate gets a weaker slow effect. I think these are just slight nerfs, nothing too big. Next is the nerf on Angela. She is used often in mid lane and it's reducing the usage rate of actual mage heroes. Because of that, her passive will need more stacks to reach its maximum movement buff. And her first skill will no longer deal extra damage against minions and creeps. Next is the nerf on Rafaela. She is stealing the limelight from mid lane mages, so they had to nerf her lane clearing capability. They removed the bonus damage against minions and creeps from her first skill. Next is the nerf on Irithel. They've lowered her attack growth from 11 to 8.5. I think this is just fair because she's incredibly strong right now. Next is the buff on Esmeralda. Her first skill will give more shield in the early game. It's a way to compete against those tanky fighters at experienced lane. Next is the buff on Ling. His critical damage is increased by 10%. I don't know why they buffed him because he's still a popular pick on ranked games. Next is the nerf on Baxia. The stun duration on his first skill was too good, so they're increasing its cooldown. That's an additional 3 seconds on all levels. Next are the battlefield adjustments. They made some changes to the experience lane and the requirement needed to reach level 2. It will now take more experience to reach level 2, but the total points needed to go from level 1 to 3 remains the same. I think it's because of a certain rotation where 2 heroes can reach level 2 on the first wave at experience lane, but now it's gone. The Lord now has HP-based damage on both its basic attack and skill. And since this will affect non-junglers, they had to make some changes to Retribution. Junglers will no longer get damage reduction against the Lord and Turtle. This means the Lord will deal the same damage to everyone, regardless if they're a jungler or not. Sounds fair, right? And this will also affect those tank junglers now that the Lord's damage is HP-based. Next are the item changes. Lightning Truncheon's damage will now increase with magic power instead of mana, and that's why Cecilion was buffed. So to increase its damage, you have to build magic power stats. And it also grants a new passive that grants movement speed when triggered. Flask of the Oasis has been nerfed with a smaller shield in the early game, from 660 down to 100 points. The roaming skill favor is so strong when combined with the support emblem and Flask of the Oasis. To balance, they had to lower its base heal by 60 to 150 points. The item Golden Staff can now correctly trigger the passive skills of Yuzong and Minsitthar. With the M5 skin, maybe Yuzong and the Golden Staff can actually work. Last are the emblem adjustments. Weakness Finder will now give guaranteed slow, but it comes with a 10-second cooldown. The cooldown can be reduced by 1 second for every basic attack, and it can go as low as 3 seconds. So that's a guaranteed 90% slow every 3 seconds if you're fast enough. Assassin Emblem gets a minus to adaptive penetration stat. Wilderness Blessing's movement speed is nerfed from 15 down to 10%. Master Assassin gets a higher damage increase from 5 to 7%. Killing Spree is now faster with a 20% movement speed. Quantum Charge gets a lower movement speed from 40 down to 30%. Impure Rage damage is nerfed by a few points. And that's it for our official server patch. On this update, they focus on those not so popular heroes in the hopes of making them appear more on ranked games. And some adjustments were also based on the recent MPL tournaments, which is good because what we want is diversity instead of seeing the same heroes all the time. So what can you say about the update? Which one do you think will become meta? Share your thoughts in the comment section. That's all for this video. Stay safe and thank you for watching.